a man armed with an assault rifle attacked the building of the embassy in Washington. This building is an important symbol of the work that was done in 2014 to make the first steps towards formal diplomatic relations between the US and Cuba, and announce the kind of thaw in the frozen relationship that had existed for decades after the Cuban Revolution of 1959. And this symbol was attacked by a gunman, a terrorist, who the US media is now playing off as a crazy Cuban in exile. Of course, the Cuban government is pushing for more cooperation with the US government at this time to uncover more about this man. And a lot of people are not buying this media campaign that he's just a crazy person, but his act was political. His act was a terrorist attack and was about US-Cuba normalization of relations, which is what we're here fighting for this International Workers' Day, for an end to the US blockade, and for the US and Cuba to cooperate in many important issues, from healthcare to many other issues that we'll be looking at today. So I want to thank you all for being here, and I want you to please stay alert to MINREX on Twitter, on Facebook, that's Cuba's Ministry of Foreign Relations, and what they're saying about this terrorist attack on the Cuban embassy in Washington, D.C. I now want to hand over the microphone to my co-chair this morning, or this afternoon, depending on where you are, Lucy Pagoada, and she'll talk a little bit more about today.
Thank you so much, compañera Tamara. Welcome, everybody. And thank you to the Cuba C Coalition for this special invitation to be part of this great celebration of May Day 2020, International Workers' Day. I welcome you all from my house in Queens, New York, one of the big epicenters of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I salute the workers of the world, the workers of La Patria Grande, La Patria of Bolivar, Morazán, Martí, the Mirabal sisters, Berta Cáceres, and Marielle Franco. I especially salute the heroic essential workers around the world who have confronted the coronavirus, even with their own lives. Too many workers have died due to this virus. Our solidarity to the victims and their families. It is a true honor to be here today. Cuba sí, bloqueo no. Thank you. So today we have a special, very beautiful program that has been prepared by an amazing team of organizers. And we're going to have featuring speakers and video greetings from around the world. Following the speakers, we will open up a section of Q&A, questions and answers. Throughout the program, you can type your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen. And at the end of the expositions, the presenters will answer the questions and we will write them. We will read them, excuse me. We are very excited about hosting this program. And you know, we're excited to be concluding the program with the signing of with the singing. We're all going to be singing the International, and there's going to be a video that is actually going to have the lyrics. That this video is from the Cuban May Day 2019. So I'm really excited about being here and being part of this celebration on May Day 2020. Thank you.
Awesome introduction, Lucy. Thank you so much. We're now going into our first speakers who are coming to us live from Havana, Cuba. We have with us Gilda Chacón Bravo and Yamil Martínez Marrero. Gilda Chacón Bravo is from the International Division of the Confederation of Cuban Trade Workers, the Central Union of Cuban Workers, or la Confederaciónde Trabajadoresde Cuba. She's also part of the World Federation of Trade Unions and represents the America region and Cuba. We also have Yamil Martínez Marrero, who's a former General Secretary of the Trade Union of at the Cuban Institute of Friendship with the Peoples, or ICAP, and he's also a member of the National Secretariat for the Union of Public Employees in Cuba. And as someone living in Canada, I also have to add to his introduction that Yamil is the head of the Canada desk at ICAP, the Cuban Institute of Friendship with the Peoples, and he is a dear friend. So welcome to you both, to Gilda and Yamil, all the way from Havana, Cuba. We look forward to your presentations. Gracias. Gilda, disculpa, we can't quite hear you. Cheryl, you may need to turn on the volume.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much on behalf of the Workers' Central Union of Cuba for the invitation to talk about the current situation of Cuban workers at times of pandemic. First, we would like to take advantage of this opportunity to express our congratulations for May Day, commemorated in exceptional conditions because of the pandemic. But it was an evidence that unity and solidarity is possible among workers around the world at critical moments. In Cuba, we celebrated this historical and significant date from home and neighborhoods mainly. At 8 o'clock in the morning, we started singing the Cuban national anthem, and with a massive clap honoring all workers who are facing the pandemic in Cuba and in the world. We showed videos, pictures, speeches in the networks, on TV, newspapers, with messages of support to the Cuban Revolution against the US blockade for unity and rights of the workers all over the world. We also published all messages and videos sent by many unions in the world congratulating Cuban workers, and especially those who are working in many countries saving lives and also condemning the US policies against Cuba. And of course, we remember as a homage the history of the martyrs of Chicago and end the celebration singing the International. Well, the CDC and its trade unions have acquired with great responsibility the measures taken by the country in its mobilizing role in the fight against the pandemic, and especially in the effects that it has generated in the country's labor context. We have maintained an active participation since the first stage of the pandemic and subsequently in the implementation of the package of measures that, in the areas of employment, wages, and social security, support the guarantees and rights of the workers with full awareness of the high costs that involve state markets. Those are 20 measures to be implemented by employers, fundamental. But to contribute to fulfill those measures, the trade unions have promoted actions to preserve the workers' health in the first place, starting from the reinforcement of social isolation. As an example of this, since last April 21st, 566,000 workers have been doing work from home, receiving, as it is expressed in measures, the 100% of their wages and other social benefits. And in the second month of isolation, and further, the 16% of their wages. 75,064 working mothers with children in nurseries, primary and special schools, together with 48,000 workers over 60 with health risks, are protected by law as well. There are workers under 60 with other kinds of diseases which have been protected too. For workers and with children under 6 years old, who must continue working in health, police, commerce sectors, and all essential services, the necessary service is guaranteed. We have to mention the support to non-state sector and in private sector, where 178,302 workers with temporary suspension of their activities are receiving certain protections, like, for example, to exempt them from paying taxes. At the same time, we have been discussing with employers the examination of all possible variants for workers' relocation as an option to be applied to those who in the municipalities and provinces are inserted in works with the Defense Council to support in popular councils or communities the tasks related to sanitation, public order, and to protect the vulnerable segments of the population, together with neighborhood organizations as part of the inclusive exercise that characterizes Cuban society. We also have contributed modestly with the CDC facilities, I mean hotels, small hotels, or guest houses in various provinces to expand the infrastructure for isolation, which are fully addressed by leaders and workers of the trade union movement and supporting all activities which are needed. Permanent attention has been given to doubts, complaints, and dissatisfactions of workers because of the misapplication of the approved policy in some places, which have been replied with the advice of the lawyers of the CDC legal section. And also we are involved into the creation of workers' brigades from tourism, commerce, and gastronomy sectors, which workplaces have had a decrease or stopped their activities. And they have joined voluntarily in cleaning and service activities in health workplaces. The strategic mission in maintaining the economy with vitality is a big challenge to workers, and in particular, the efficiency that it requires, as long as the current epidemiological conditions allow us. Particularly, we have been focused in the production of goods and services that ensure to satisfy the demands of the population. Today, recognized as a limited supply, that it has been generating illegalities with the rise of some prices in various places. According to that, the unions have implemented a productive evolution movement to promote, even with lack of equal allocation and inputs, and the criminal US blockade to ensure labor productivity, growth, and higher results in sectors linked to agricultural products and food, the production of hygiene products, medicines, sugar harvest, fast dispatch in ports, and the transfer of goods to the internal economy, among others. So it means that the CTC, the trade unions, and the workers are playing a leading role in this battle. There is a commitment and a willingness to overcome obstacles. The workers do know that resist is not enough today. It is essential to advance in the development programs. First of all, starting from our own efforts, taking care of ourselves and applying all sanitation measures to defeat this virus. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity, and we would like to extend our warmest salutations to all trade unions, organizations, and workers in the United States and Canada, and especially the ones who support Cuba. And in particular, to those that are online now, with the confidence that together, with your solidarity, we will leave the blockades to Cuba, Venezuela, and other countries, and we will continue defending the workers' rights the world over. Thank you.
Hello, Yamil. Thank you so much to Gilda. We welcome up Yamil. If you can try and speak slowly, Yamil, I think the connection will be a little bit better. So thank you so much to Gilda, and we now welcome Yamil.
Okay, thank you, Tamara. I am with you.
Yes, we can hear you. Just speak slowly.
Okay, I'll do my best with my English. Okay, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers in the United States and as well as in Canada for giving us this opportunity of expressing some ideas and discussing some ideas in these times of pandemic. Also, I would like to thank the guest speakers that are going to be involved in this webinar, along with the followers, that people that are following us in the social networks, in internet. First, I would like to start by referring to some, despite this moment the world is living, Cuba has received solidarity not only what the US current administration is doing against our country is in the news, but also some activities, some solidarity actions that have been taking place worldwide. And I would like to first address that. First, I would like to speak about the campaign that against the blockade have been taking place in the last days, especially led by the Cuba Solidarity Campaign at the United Kingdom, you know, involving all the workers of that country, especially the working class of that country, that have engaged in this campaign to finalize the blockade, pressing the US government, involving important personalities of the culture, politicians, in that struggle for the lifting of the blockade. As well, I would like to mention the campaigns in many countries, including Canada, through the Canadian Network in Cuba. It's organizing to gather funds to help Cuba in the recovery and to help Cuba in this struggle against the virus. Also, in the United States, I must address that many local governments have been issuing petitions to try to for the government to buy the Cuban drug interferon alpha 2B to fight COVID, and as a way of pressuring and as a way also of ending that, making a step forward in the intention of ending the blockade that government has imposed to our country for over 60 years now. In Europe, in Italy, Spain, Germany, we have also received many expressions of solidarity that, of course, tells us what Cuba means, what Cuba represents to the world. We have received also actions from Africa, Latin America, Asia, well, worldwide. Recently, probably you've heard about President of Nicaragua, Daniel Ortega, mentioning also in these difficult conditions we are living, how the US government is still trying to suffocate the Cuban Revolution, using the pandemic as another way of pressuring our country to make it fall. Also, Gilda was mentioning the coverage that our population is having. I would like to mention that we're not only referring to the over 28,000 health professionals that Cuba has deployed in over 59 countries of the world. Apart from that, from those figures, in these times of pandemic, Cuba has also been able to send over 2,000 medical personnel to 23 countries in 25 Harry Reid brigades that are right now challenging that pandemic, putting at risk their own lives in order to save the most precious value, that is the human life. You know, Cuba has also been involved in that struggle at the forefront, helping the World Health Organization and helping any small place that is in need of our help. Also, I would like to mention that Cuba has been not only with interferon alpha 2B, but also with the biomodulin. It's a new product to prevent the COVID-19 that is given to our population free of charge, again, to prevent, because this is a drug that triggers the immune system and helps somehow to prevent the COVID. And Cuba has been able to do all of this and receive all of this in the middle of an escalate from the US government to submit our country. Earlier, Tamara was mentioning the shooting to our embassy in Washington. That is another action that is added to the hundreds of persecution that transactions from and to Cuba in order to continue triggering our economy. Also, the persecution is added to the persecution to cut the oil supply to our country. You have heard about the pieces of news of the persecution to ships in order to ban those ships from entering to Cuba that oil that we need to continue not only with our own development, but also to continue with all of those programs that Cuba has been able to provide to help the world. These are some of the things that we have been involved. At ICAP, we have had the opportunity of exchanging with many, especially in these times, through social media, through internet, Facebook, Twitter, with many friends worldwide. And it's incredible the support that we have received, but it's important also to highlight one idea. We need that solidarity more than ever, because the US government, it is, apart from what is happening, it is to expect more aggressive measures against our country. That's why right now, your solidarity is more needed than ever. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, compañero Yamil Martínez Marrero. We thank you very, very much. It's a beautiful presentation. And before I present our next panelist, Judy Sheridan Gonzalez, there is something here that our audience should know. Hi, everyone. Due to the US blockade on Cuba, Cubans are not able to use the Zoom software platform. We have connected with them through another software, but it means that some of the quality is compromised. We appreciate your patience because we have seen some of the messages that you have been sending about the quality of the sound. So bear with us, let's be patient, resist. We know how to do that. We know how to resist the empire. Our next panelist is Judy Sheridan Gonzalez. We welcome her. And Judy Sheridan Gonzalez is the president of the New York State Nurses Association. She is a frontline working nurse in the fight against COVID-19. We welcome you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having us on your program. I was asked to give a little bit of context to what's going on here in the front lines. As people know on this call, our healthcare system in the United States is built around profit, about generating profit, not about caring for people. And this pandemic has illustrated more than ever before that that is a failed system, because it's not profitable to keep masks, ventilators, respirators, and materials in a warehouse that you can't sell. But in order to deal with a disaster or a pandemic, you have to do that. It's not profitable to keep beds open, to keep hospitals open that may not be used at 100% capacity. It's not profitable to train people or to have mock disaster drills, to do all the things that are necessary to deal with a disaster, a pandemic, a hurricane, an earthquake, or any other calamity that can befall to the public. And we pretty much don't even have a public health infrastructure. It's been proven after the disasters that have hit, floods in the south, fires in the west, hurricanes in the north and the east. None of this has been well prepared for, and nothing has been fixed. So this pandemic hit us like a ton of bricks. In addition, in New York City, and I think it was mentioned before, where we are in the pandemic around the world, where I live and work in the Bronx, it's the lowest health indices, the worst health indices in the entire city of New York. So we started off in a bad way with bed closings, all the bed closings and hospital closings because of this infatuation with austerity that all of our governments seem to be in love with, have harmed our communities of color, our poorest communities, our Black and Latino communities, people who are elderly, people who are disabled, all of the communities that have suffered the most also suffer the worst outcomes based on this, what we call the social determinants of health, which include racism, sexism, poverty, lack of education, lack of proper housing, lack of leisure time and leisure space, and so on and so forth. So we started off with bare bones medical care, if it existed at all. We also have immigrants in our community who are now, as you're probably aware, in the shadows more than ever before, also not having access to health. Because of these horrible cuts, our staffing was at bare bones and we were overcrowded. Our emergency rooms are overcrowded. People are packed together like sardines. And when they're admitted up into the hospital, when they're quite ill, they're also placed on stretchers in hallways on patient units. Imagine that, no bathroom, no toilet, no water, no privacy. This is the situation that my hospital was in before the pandemic. So when you're all of a sudden doubling your capacity and everybody is deathly ill, you can only imagine what it does to a community and certainly to us as workers. The other thing that happened was we had some belief in this Centers for Disease Control. We thought it was a scientific structure, that the National Institutes of Health was a scientific structure, but all these scientific structures have been politicized. And because of their politicization, what's happened is standards changed. From the very beginning of the pandemic, we were not protected. When they found out somewhere that we had scarcity or lack of equipment, where I believe that there was still stuff in warehouses somewhere, instead of the Centers for Disease Control saying, well, you know, we're going to try to get that for you, they said, well, we're going to loosen our standards. So initially, we weren't even permitted to wear masks in early March. We were threatened with discipline for wearing the N95 mask that looks like this kind of a mask, you know, that really protects you against transmission, airborne transmission. We didn't get the appropriate gowns, any of the protective equipment, which is why you see a big hashtag all the time, get me PPE. Our biggest fight in the beginning was trying to save our own lives while we tried to save patients. That was a fight. It required organizing. We were able to capture the public narrative, which was really important, and it dispelled this myth of the government protecting us. We also were very late in the game in having social distancing in the United States. Very poor preparation, as you may know. It's a terrifying concept right now that they want to bring everyone back out into the open, which is only going to make the pandemic worse. Our nurses were traumatized as well. Our frontline workers, doctors, nurses, we've even had suicides. In addition to putting their lives in danger and getting quite ill, many of us got ill. Some of us have died. We also have been dealing with suicides and incredible depression, because taking care of, in an ICU, for example, where you would be expected to take care of one patient, give really good care to one patient, now you're having 5 and 6, and there's no way in the world you can do that. The same thing with a regular unit, and our regular units were like ICUs with most people on ventilators, and it's impossible to take care of 10 or 12 of those patients as well. And that was the situation we faced. So what did that do? It gave us the will and our members to have the will to fight, and fight we did. We fought against the government. We fought against the hospital bosses. We demanded a type of behavior that I think occurs in Cuba, where you have a public health infrastructure and the will of the government and the will of the people to actually intervene in a very positive way. I think it woke people up to the fact that this is something that we really need in this country. We've been fighting for more of a national health system for years. Now people's minds are open to that kind of a thing because they see what happens when you don't have it, and everybody's been harmed. We're also dealing with the fact that many of our poorer populations in particular have been hardest by the disease. It should be no surprise. People were less healthy to begin with, less access to care. There was very minimal testing in the beginning. They're just starting to test in a much better way. There wasn't identification of contacts. Nothing that was done that would help stem this pandemic is what led to us having the highest per capita rates in the world and the highest numbers of sick people, including deaths. There were so many deaths that sometimes we had dozens of corpses that we had to transport out of the hospital. It was really devastating. In addition to all of us losing loved ones, I myself and my colleagues have lost people very close to us, and it was just an impossible situation. So what have we done since then? I think we've learned now. We're in this sort of a second phase. We're kind of plateauing out in New York City a little bit. we reached this real big peak, and now it's starting to plateau. And there's this big push to go back to business, because what's more important is business. We had demanded that the government pass something called the Defense Production Act, which would have gotten us PPE. President Trump never really implemented that act until right now. Right now, he implements it so we can have hamburgers, so that the people in meat processing plants are unprotected and they're demanded to go back to work. People who are working, we are essential workers, transit workers, food transport, many immigrant-dominated populations, many women of color working in these fields are also not protected, and the death rate has been high there. So it's brought us together in solidarity. Our communities were the ones who supported us. They made donations of masks. They brought food. They brought all sorts of things. And I think all that this has served to do is open people's minds, because to have normalization with Cuba, we have to win people over to understand that everything that they thought was true is not true, and everything that they thought was bad is not bad, and everything that they thought was good is not good. And I definitely see a change in that characteristic of people being complacent and much more willing to struggle. Our union has sent delegations to Cuba to investigate the healthcare system, and had friendship with the people of Cuba and tried to understand how things were very different in spite of the lack of resources, and we're very impressed. That's something we'd really like to share with the public, and some people had closed minds to it. Right now, we feel like there's an ocean of openness that we want to take advantage of in trying to transform our society into a just society, a democratic society, and a society that takes care of its people. And the solidarity and love that's been shown to us as frontline workers, we also show to our communities and our sister and brother unions, and certainly other countries throughout the world, because people are people, and we should all be able to have interchange and respect and cooperation. And if this pandemic doesn't prove it, I don't know what will. So our mottos are: we're essential, we're not expendable, and being a hero doesn't mean you have to be a martyr. So we're in solidarity with everybody, and we hope that the meaning of the word solidarity carries forward. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much, Judy. That was very powerful. Really gives us both a taste of the heartbreak and the frustrations and the anger of working people in the United States today, but also a real sense of hope in change and in the future. So you balance that beautifully. Thank you so much for your participation today, and we hope you can stay for part of the discussion. I now have the honor of introducing Tulio Virges. Tulio is the International Secretary for the Venezuelan Union of Public Sector Workers. Tulio is also works in the Cancilleria in Venezuela. And I have to share a big thank you with him, because as a teacher and union member in Canada, I was actually invited on to Mayday call with Camarada Presidente Nicolas Maduro, Venezuelan president, yesterday. And so I have to give a big thank you to Tulio that I was able to participate in an amazing online Mayday celebration that included the rightful president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. Tulio is an important speaker, and unfortunately, Francisco Torrealba, who was meant to be with us today, is unable to make it, but Tulio offered to step in and take his place. So we're really happy that Tulio is here with us today. So please help me welcome Tulio.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you for inviting me. Thank you to Allison, who invited me like 20 days ago to be part of this. Well, I'm here just to tell you how Venezuela is dealing with the COVID-19. As well as you know, Venezuela have been under a massive attack from the United States and the European Union, basically, including Canada also, since like 5 years now, after President Chavez died. And nevertheless, we have some friends around the world. So without those helps, we cannot manage the situation. So we have been helped by the China government. We have some supplies and medical assistance also from Russia. Of course, the Cubans has been in Venezuela for 20 years now, the doctors and nurses helping us a lot. We got some help also from Iran, Turkey, India. So even we are under huge blockade, we have been able to deal with this pandemic thing. Now I have some figures to share with you. Venezuela, up until today, we have just 345 cases. And we have 148 recovered people. They defeat the disease. Unfortunately, 10 Venezuelans has died because of the virus. More Venezuelans has died outside Venezuela than inside Venezuela. So that's why President Maduro yesterday was calling them to come back. They are very welcome to come back to Venezuela. So we have 43% of recovered people. And we have done, thanks to China, we have done more COVID-19 tests than everybody else in the region, in Latin America, by far. And talking about workers, for example, Alison was asking me to talk about how the pandemic has affected workers in Venezuela. Well, in Venezuela, we have President Maduro decreed a work immobility, so nobody can get fired from the jobs. Nobody. Besides that, the government helped small companies and businesses to keep running. So through the Patria ID platform that we have all information of everybody in that. We have more than 9 million people subscribed to that platform. Through that platform, the government is paying a basic salary and some an equivalent of food stamps. It's an allowance to buy food. The government is giving these allowances for 6 months to every single worker in those small businesses and companies. So I have a friend that he runs a hotel. I was talking to him a few minutes ago, and he was entering into the system to upload payroll so that workers can get directly that allowance, that bonus. Also with this platform, there is a survey, they do constantly surveys. So how do you feel if you have symptoms? So people from their phones or from their computers, they will check. Every time that they go online, they will ask, this was your last situation, your last update, and you will type there if something is going on, something new is going on with you. So they will send Cubans or Venezuelan doctors to directly to home. At the beginning, for example, when somebody got tested and they were positive, we sent them home as a quarantine, voluntary quarantine. But then we really realized that they weren't doing the quarantine inside their homes. They were just at home. So the family members got infected. So now every single one that results positive in COVID-19, we move them to the hospital until they recover. So that way we contain more infection. elections in Venezuela. Something else is important to say is how the community councils has been part of this fight. Community council, I'm part of my community council since like 9 years now. So we keep the people up to date of the last information. We, of course, we participate on the food distribution program. We be sure that everybody's getting the proteins and the rest of the food once a month, sometimes more than once, depending on the family. And also some of the community councils and communes that they are being productive, even producing food with a urban farming model, or in mass manufacturing. I will show you now what they do in my community council. They do this. This is for kids, for example. And this is mine, it's for adults. And this is mine also, but it's that way because, you know, I'm part of the release of Red Alcohol. And so we are distributing this for people. In my neighborhood, we are 11 community councils. We have like 400 families in my sector, my part of the community. So everybody's getting the food, everybody's getting masks, everybody's getting information. People are very aware of what's going on. During the morning, you see people going out for shopping, but after midday, everybody's at home. There is plenty of food. Even the news said the opposite. There's plenty of food. There is no holdings. It's very important. The prices are very high. And I'll lie to you. Profiteer is killing us actually. And but we are doing well so far. I mean, we try to help Colombians also. We send some ventilators, equipment, and they say no. So we're trying to share whatever we are getting from China and Russia to some people in the Caribbean who need it. So we have enough equipment and enough stuff. So I cannot miss this opportunity to express the solidarity from the Venezuelan workers to our friends of the New York Metro Workers Union. We know that some of them got infected doing their job. Of course, to the New York State Nurses Association. Both of them have been in Venezuela as international observers for our elections. So we thank you all. And we express our solidarity with the nurses and the transit workers. Also, the Teamsters, they got recently here, they got up here for 2 days. So I sent them to Cuba and then they went back to the US. Teamsters have some cases of coronavirus in the United States and Canada. Of course, the postal workers of Canada are friends. We know that they have more than 20 cases around. And especially the teachers in New York City, of course, and in Chicago. I would like to say hello and express my solidarity with Sarah Chambers. Sarah Chambers is part of the union and she's a teacher. And she's at home fighting the virus. She got infected. So, any question that you may have of how we are dealing, I will tell you. Okay. I'm sorry. I don't know if I told you that about the bonus. With all, besides this small business, everybody in Venezuela who is part of the Patria platform, we got some bonus from time to time. President Maduro gave us a bonus was stay-at-home bonus. So to encourage people to stay at home. And we just got our May Day bonus for workers. So with that money, it is a way to give a subsidy directly to the person, directly. I mean, it's not through any other programs. You are getting the money on your account. So we got like 2 basic salaries today as a bonus, an extra bonus. So any questions you may have, I will be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, compañero Tulio, and thanks for the beautiful greeting to all teachers. Tamara and I are both teachers. I belong to the United Federation of Teachers here, and I just wanted to make a comment about the amazing presentation in terms of clearing out to people how the people of Venezuela are not hungry because of the attention, obviously, and the plan, well-organized plan that the government of President Maduro has established. They are very much opposed to what is happening in the United States. The country that is supposed to be the richest country in the world is where we see the most lines of people, so many lines of people from north to south and from east to west. You all seen it on TV, and we see it in our neighborhoods, how many people are hungry here. And please know that we condemn completely the criminal US imposed sanctions on Venezuela and the other 2 countries that to us constitute the troika of resistance, Cuba and Nicaragua. And also the sanctions against other countries around the world, like Zimbabwe, for example, among others, that we are fighting very strongly here to make sure that sanctions are lifted. Thank you so much. And now we are going to present our next panelist, Kaya Caba. And Kaya Shaba, excuse me, Kaya Shaba is the national spokesperson, National Education, Health, and Allied Workers Union, NEHAWU, Congress of South African Trade Unions. We welcome you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please receive fraternal greetings from the 278,143 members of the National Education, Health, and Allied Workers Union, which is NEHAWU. We're an affiliate of the Congress of South African Trade Unions, which is COSATU, and we're also affiliated to the World Federation of Trade Unions. Currently, our president, Comrade Mzwandile Mokwaiba, is the president of WAFTU, and our general secretary, Comrade Zola Sapeta, is the general secretary of the WAFTU Trade Union International Public Service and Allied, right? NEHAWU is an industrial public sector union which organizes in health, both public and private, state administration, education, social development, parastatal, including public entities. Firstly, we would like to take this opportunity to wish workers across the world a happy Workers' Day, and we encourage workers to continue waging a relentless war against employers who prioritize profits over the health and safety of workers. On the occasion of the May Day, we convey our fraternal solidarity to millions of workers and to the people of Cuba under the capable leadership of the Communist Party of Cuba. We condemn the cowardly attack on the Cuban embassy in Washington, D.C. on Thursday. We view the attack as part of the broader effort to compel the Cuban people to cower under US imperialism and aggression. On the 27th of April 2020, we welcome 217 healthcare professionals from Cuba to help South Africa during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Cuban delegation included, amongst others, family physicians, epidemiologists, biostatistics, healthcare technology engineers, biotechnology experts, and specialists who have been carefully selected to assist South Africa in containing and arresting the spread of the novel coronavirus. Currently in South Africa, we have 6,336 people who are infected with COVID-19, and 123 of them has already lost their lives. With the new infections growing at an alarming rate, the Cuban brigade couldn't have come at a better time. In this regard, we condemn the Western propaganda, including from the US State Secretary, Mr. Mike Pompeo, that suggests that these healthcare professionals are slaves that are exploited by the Cuban government. The South African people appreciate the interventions by the Cuban government, including the training of featured doctors as part of the Mandela Cluster initiative. Currently, we're looking forward to the return of more than 200 graduates later this year to the country to plow back what they learned in Cuba as part of their training. NEHAO continues to advocate for the extension of this initiative as part of the legacy of both Mandela and Castro, which has been in place for more than 24 years. It has been an effective vehicle that addresses the shortage of doctors in our understaffed healthcare system. In South Africa, currently we are battling the outbreak of the coronavirus like everywhere else in the world. We've been fighting with our government, especially the National Department of Health, to protect our members and workers from contracting the virus. And to date, more than 300 workers have been infected with the virus, especially those who work in private hospitals. So we took the Department of Health court earlier in May to compel it to comply with the Occupational Health and Occupational Health and Safety Act, and to provide adequate protective equipment, including masks, gloves, and sanitizers. Many workers have been exposed to the virus due to the lack of readiness to deal with the virus. For instance, in the Eastern Cape province, workers who work in the emergency services were given refuse bags to use as aprons because they did not have enough stock of PPEs. And the shortage of PPEs have been made worse by the greedy private sector by inflating prices and selling them at 4 times their value. So the capitalists have used the pandemic to maximize their profits and dividends. So in private hospitals, they've also shown total disregard for workers' lives and focused on profits and their standing in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. They have been hiding numbers of workers who are infected from the Department of Health and also from the National Institute of Communicable Diseases of South Africa. So some private hospitals have also been refusing to give workers their test results as and when workers test, and some going as far as falsifying them in order to keep workers at their job and not be financially responsible for them when they have to be quarantined or when they have to find a place for them to be isolated. So many workers have contracted the virus because they have not had training on the proper sequencing of putting on the mask and removing them, including throwing them away, disposing of the used PPEs. So over and above the dangers of the health and safety of workers, many workers have suffered greatly financially, including massive salary cuts and job losses. So some companies has been getting rid of workers because they've been closed, because we've had a lockdown that has started on the 26th of March and it is still ongoing. So the coronavirus has caused unprecedented damages to the economy, coupled with an unacceptable number of deaths. As I've mentioned, 123 people have died in the country so far, and I've mentioned job losses and the loss of personal income for millions of our people. So essential workers who've been at the forefront in the line of duty since the announcement of the nationwide lockdown have been faced by many challenges, including the lack of public transport, lack of proper catering, exhaustion, and lack of assistance with mental health and counseling, because we know this is a very stressful time. We're understaffed, so workers have to work much longer hours, so they burn out and so forth. So, another issue that we're dealing with is that public servants who are in the majority are in the front line of dealing with the coronavirus did not really receive a salary increase because government elected to renege on a salary increment agreement that was signed in 2018. So when we're negotiating for salaries in 2018, we had a 3-year agreement which was to run for 3 years. So the last leg of the agreement was supposed to be this year. So they're supposed to get their last salary increase so that we negotiate going forward. So they did not get that. And basically this has dampened their spirits, the spirit of workers. However, they remain committed to serving the country as it battles the pandemic. So in conclusion, NEHAO will intensify the call for the United States of America under the Trump administration to lift the illegal blockade against Cuba with immediate effect. And moreover, we want to pledge solidarity with Amazon workers who are led by Chris, who are currently on strike because of unsafe working conditions. And we extend our solidarity with workers in Iran and Venezuela. And we say an injury to one is an injury to all. Thank you very much.
It's so difficult because we cannot clap loudly for each other, but thank you so much to Kaya Kaba for being here with us all the way from South Africa and for sharing about the struggles of working people in South Africa today, as well as the hope represented by the Cuban doctors that have just arrived. We asked Kaya before this webinar started if he'd had a chance to meet any of the Cuban doctors, but they've actually arrived so recently that he mentioned that they're still in their 2-week quarantine before they get to start their work. But we're really, thank you so much for bringing those incredible greetings, and look forward to hearing more news from you, hopefully, on the process of the Cuban doctors, and hopefully provide some relief for some of the issues that the people of South Africa are facing. So thank you. So our next speaker is Chris Smalls. Chris Smalls was fired from Amazon. He was a worker who led the walkout protests against unsafe working conditions in a giant Amazon warehouse in Staten Island, New York City. And we're so happy to have with us another one of these frontline workers who is speaking out against the challenges that working people are facing in the workplace in the United States, in Canada, throughout Latin America, and as we just heard from Kaya, around the world. So please give a warm welcome and let us bring forward Chris Smalls.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with all these prominent people. I just want to say thank you to all the organizers that put this together, everybody that's involved in this webinar that's on the line right now, all the love and supporters from all around the world, all the different countries. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. I want to say thank you to Kaya. Thank you to Judy, the Nurses Association of New York. Yesterday, during my protest, we had a number of different unions from New York City join my picket lines. It was a historical moment to see the nurses, the first responders, join forces with the frontliners of New York City and Staten Island. So I want to say thank you again to everybody. I want to especially say thank you to Cuba for what they're doing during this pandemic. It's leading the charge and saving lives daily. And my hat goes off to everybody that's putting their lives at risk to save other people's lives. Cuba, for years, has been oppressed by the U.S., and it's a shame, and we need to lift the blockades and sanctions of Cuba. We need to stand together in solidarity, and I'm so happy to be a voice from New Jersey to stand with you guys today. I support you guys 100%. So that being said, yes, 31 days ago, I put my career on the line for Amazon to stand up for the health and safety concerns of my fellow employees and my colleagues. We were not prepared. We weren't prepared as a country. We weren't prepared at work. Essential workers were not prepared. We didn't have no facial masks. We didn't have no cleaning supplies. We didn't have the PPE, just like the nurses. We got hit like a ton of bricks. I seen it coming. I tried to voice my concerns. I lost my job because of that, but I have no regrets. The reason why I did it is to save human lives. That's the underlying message, but that's the message that needs to be out there. This was bigger than me. This was bigger than JFK 8. This was bigger than Staten Island. This is now a worldwide crisis. We all in this together. Every day somebody loses a loved one. Every day somebody loses a fellow coworker. This should have never happened the way it did. But we here together, and I think together we want to get through this. Yesterday, May Day, we protested again in front of Staten Island. The nurses joined us, the MTA workers joined us, the transit workers, the bus drivers, the train operators, they joined us. We had an historical moment yesterday, and I think we built an alliance that's going to be forever remembered in history. And that being said, today is another day in history for us to be here with countries and unions and teachers and doctors and nurses and frontliners from all over the world here today, showing solidarity for our supporters. It's historical by itself. And we have to overcome the governments that are oppressing what we need and our demands. The Trump administration is definitely not the administration that we need to listen to. I just want to throw that message out there. They want to reopen the economy. They put in profits above people. 32 states will be reopening. If you're here listening, please do not go outside. Do not listen to the government right now. They want to reopen it because they're worrying about their money, their economy, their businesses. That's not the right thing to do. We're here because we want to save humanity. We want to save human lives. And the only way we do that is come together. The nurses that I was with yesterday made a great statement. They said they've seen more essential workers than anything, especially in the epicenter of New York City. So what I've done, standing up for essential workers, is helping them out. The workers that they see come in sick, deathly. These are my fellow coworkers that I stood up for. So they said what I did is actually helping them out. And for me to do that and help the real heroes out, the doctors and nurses, the people that can save people's lives, it's an honor. And I'm going to continue to do that. Build an alliance, build solidarity, continue to spread the word and the knowledge that is not the reality of the situation from the government. The government is misleading people. The government is giving us false information. The government is not in our best interest right now. But we, the people, we are the voices. We have to take the power into our own hands. And I believe everybody here has that one common goal to save humanity. And once again, it's been an honor to be here and spread the knowledge and the word and share this moment in solidarity with you guys. And I hope that we can continue to do this and continue to preserve humanity for our future generations forever. In solidarity, thank you guys for having me. It's been a pleasure. Stay safe.
Thank you, brother Chris, for this amazing presentation. And we should also remind the world that this fascist government of Donald Trump should protect the workers here instead of using our tax money to try to create regime change in Venezuela in the middle of the pandemic and trying to destabilize the Caribbean. We want to thank the people who are participating in this conference from all over the world. People from Ecuador, from Argentina, from Colombia, from all over the United States, Canada, Australia, Venezuela, South Africa, Guatemala, Honduras. And somebody just mentioned, Tamara, that they love your background with the picture of Fidel. And I agree, it's a beautiful picture. So I just wanted to make that comment because I thought that was so beautiful. Our next panelist is Dan Foreman. And Dan Foreman is the international representative for the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. Welcome, compañero Dan Foreman.
Greetings, and a special thank you to the organizing committee. It's an amazing job that you've done putting this all together today, and bringing a great number of workers together on Workers' Day is always a very good thing. I'd first like to take a moment to acknowledge that I live and work on unceded and unsurrendered Anishinaabe land located in Ottawa, Canada. And I want to pay tribute to the Indigenous people on Turtle Island and around the globe. We look to the Indigenous people for guidance and ways to live in harmony with the earth. We support the We support their resistance to colonialism and join with them in their fight to abolish colonial structures and institutions, and their fight for the preservations of our water and forests and of our natural resources. I think it's important as Canadians that we acknowledge that. Canadian Union of Postal Workers represents over 50,000 postal workers across Canada and Quebec. We were a proud union. We have a long-standing history with the Cuban trade union movement for well over 30 years now. We've gone back and forth with delegations between Havana and different parts of Cuba and our union. We're also very proud of, we're a fighting union. We fight for what's right. We fight for the workers' rights. We're one of the first unions in Canada, actually, that went on strike back in the 80s for maternity leave of a predominantly male union at the time. And we won maternity leave back in that day, and now every Canadian enjoys maternity leave. So postal workers have always been there. Our latest and biggest fight was over pay equity, to make sure that all postal workers, men and women, were paid the same wage. And just last year, we won a historic battle on the pay equity front for rural and suburban mail couriers. CUPW is committed to advocating for human rights and for climate change. We have a proud history of international solidarity, including relationships with several unions across the globe. To name a few, especially today, Cuba, Palestine, Colombia, Venezuela, and many, many others. Trinidad and Tobago, I believe they're on the phone. And we also help. We don't just have communications. We focus on joint projects with different unions in different countries in order to bring actual working relationships between the two countries. We've also been involved not just in delegations with Cuba. Many years ago now, we put it in our national constitution in a form of a resolution to actually end the inhumane blockade of Cuba, as well as a resolution many, many years ago in freeing the Cuban Five, which are all free and at home now. The Canadian Union of Postal Workers will always stand with Cuban workers and will always stand with Cuba. Like every other frontline worker in Canada, we've been designated as so-called essential. We don't consider ourselves essential. We consider ourselves vital, important, but definitely not essential, not in comparison to our healthcare workers anyways. And, you know, while Canadians are self-isolating, we've been out there working in our communities during this pandemic. Our members are living with uncertainty every single day, worried about stress, the health and safety of their workplace, having enough PPEs. Will I have a mask today? Will I have gloves today? Will there be any hand sanitizer today? Will there be any safety precautions before I entered out there? And the union has been, you know, fighting Canada Post each and every single day and trying to make sure that our workers are safe out there. And like every workplace, we've had postal workers that have come down with COVID. Thankfully, none of them fatally, but we've had quite a few across the country. And we're having a hell of a problem in keeping PPEs and everything like that up to date with the workers out there on the front lines. And it's become a major, major issue. CUPW is also looking at the post-pandemic and restarting the Canadian economy. Going back to normal is not something we really want to do. The normal wasn't working for workers in Canada. I don't think it was working for workers in the US, and I don't think it's been working for workers across the globe. So the new normal is something that we have to strive for. And it can't be business as usual. The catastrophic neoliberal rounds of austerity measures clearly demonstrate the need to abolish the current economic system in Canada. These policies have had a terrible impact on our elderly, many of whom have died. And what can only be said, you know, when you're living in a country like Canada and the US, and you see the news of what happened in Europe and what happened in the seniors' homes, we all knew this was coming, yet we took no action, none whatsoever. It seems like our elderly have become the most vulnerable of this disease. And it's an embarrassment for all of humanity when we allow this to happen. And I hope we, you know, to do that. To make matters worse, CUPW is an organizing union, and we had just spent the last probably close to a year and a half organizing the gig worker economy here in Canada, namely Fedora, the Bike Couriers Union. And to hear Chris speak, it comes from my heart. We had finally managed to have the labor board recognize these workers as dependent workers. They were about to join a union. They were about to get rights. They were about to get everything that a worker should have. Unfortunately, Fedora shut their doors and pulled out of Canada, and they would rather shut down their company and move out than protect workers and have any workers that can join a union. We think that's terrible. And the fight for the gig economy workers has to continue with all of us in North America and with the Amazon workers. The Amazon workers are working under extremely unsafe conditions compared to the rest of us. They're out there on the front line every single day. And as a labor movement, we have to do everything we possibly can to organize these workers and to bring them into the health and safety fold that the rest of us get to live by. I thank you all very much, and I wish you all a tremendous May Day.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much, Don Foreman, and thank you to all Canadian postal workers and the Canadian Postal Workers Union for being a voice across Canada for solidarity with so many oppressed nations around the world, fighting against imperialism, and also at the same time being on the ground workers and frontline workers really during this COVID-19 crisis. So thank you for bringing that message of solidarity. I'm now very honored to introduce to you Edgar Franks, and Edgar is joining us from Familias Unidas por la Justicia in Washington State. He is the political director of Familias Unidas por la Justicia. So please join me in welcoming Paul Franks. Edgar Franks, so sorry. I don't see actually Edgar here with us on the call at this moment. We're going to get somebody to try and connect with him, but that means that we are going to go into our videos. I will try and work on getting to him, but Lucy, can you cue up the videos?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, compañera Tamara. We have international labor solidarity messages. From the first one is from Movimiento dos Trabajadores Rurais Sem Terra, MST, Brazilian Landless Workers Movement, MST. And the second video is from the Oil Field Workers Trade Union of Trinidad and Tobago. And the third solidarity greeting, it's from the Healthcare Citizen Alliance in Rome, Italy. So we'll play the videos now, those beautiful greetings that our comrades from around the world have sent us. Thank you.
Oh, we're missing the sound for the videos, my friends. Okay, we'll just work to get those videos queued up again with sound.
Yes.
Buenos días a todos y todas. Hablo por nombre de la Coordinación Ciudadana por la Sanidad aquí en Roma, Italia, y somos honrados de estar acá con ustedes y a contarle un poquito de nuestra lucha, de lo que intentamos hacer. Antes que todo hay que decir que nosotros nacimos como organización hace 3 años, entonces antes de la crisis del coronavirus, y porque como decimos siempre, la sanidad pública acá en Italia ya estaba al colapso. Y somos trabajadores de la sanidad, trabajadores de otros sectores, ocupantes de vivienda, y todos los que necesitan la salud y la salud pública, por supuesto. Y nacimos por intentar contestar a las políticas neoliberales que en los últimos años acá ni tienen enemigos y rivales, y por eso en los últimos años cortaron alrededor de 37 billones de euros del presupuesto por la sanidad, cortaron alrededor de 750 áreas hospitalarias. Hay una falta de trabajadores, es estimada alrededor de 100.000 entre médicos y enfermeros, enfermeras. Y estos números, que son solo unos ejemplos de lo que están haciendo, son la base del desastre sanitario, y que ahora ya va por ser un desastre también económico y social, sobre todo en el norte del país, porque nuestra sanidad pública es destrozada por el neoliberalismo. Y también en esos momentos, aunque con una crisis sanitaria que es espantosa, con miles de muertos, no hay ni un síntoma de redefinición, de reestructuración de la sanidad. Y aunque en esta situación siguen dándole dinero a la sanidad privada, que ya llega casi al 40% de la asistencia. Y por eso hemos decidido que ya basta, que nuestra salud, nuestra vida no es una mercancía, no es en venta. Y en eso estamos, intentando armar un movimiento popular que sepa parar el proceso de haciendalización y privatización, que sepa garantizar un trabajo digno a los trabajadores hospitalarios, que ya no es así por la precariedad, por el poquito dinero que le dan. Saber repensar una medicina territorial que sea basada en la vida y no en el dinero como es ahora. Pero también tener la capacidad de estar conectados con todas las otras luchas necesarias para los oprimidos y las oprimidas, que son la lucha para la vivienda, la lucha para un salario digno, porque por supuesto obtener el derecho a la salud significa obtener también una casa y un salario digno, porque ¿cómo vamos a estar bien si no tenemos casa? Y por eso le queremos también agradecer al pueblo cubano, que en esos momentos difíciles llegó con un ayudo médico, y a diferencia de nuestros aliados, entonces europeos y estadounidenses, que no nos enviaron nada y al revés nos bloquearon mascarillas y material sanitario, no nos enviaron. Y les queremos agradecer, porque eso es la base de un proceso que pueda cambiar el mundo, porque si no se puede cambiar, y que sea basado sobre esos actos, sobre la solidaridad, que siempre se queda la ternura de los pueblos. Y nada, un cálido abrazo a todos y todas ustedes, y hasta la victoria siempre.
I'm Marcelo Durão from the MST Internationalist Brigade in Cuba. We want, on behalf of the direction of the Landless movement, leave our greeting to this meeting of solidarity with Cuba. In the context of a new offenses against Cuba and the deepening of the US economic blockade, the main obstacle for the development of the country, the Landless movement understands that it is essential to renew and strengthen the sense of solidarity with Cuba and our defenses of Cuba. Cuba has historically demonstrated that the purity in the human being, built a society project based on social justice, for its people: health, education, food, security, culture, human relation, women and the senior and young people. As a landless movement, we want to acknowledge and thank Cuba for the international solidarity it has carried out around the world, especially with MST in our relationship history. We want to highlight Cuba's role in this time of the coronavirus pandemic, its participation with the brigades of doctors in 22 countries, his contribution in the field of science with research and preparation of medicine makes us understand the transformation that the socialist revolution brought to this island. Cuban brothers, we've counted together, who stood our workers for the 1st of May. Our power to the people. Hasta la victoria siempre y viva Cuba.
Good day, comrades. My name is Ozzy Warwick from the Oilfields Workers Trade Union in Trinidad and Tobago. On behalf of the workers of the Progressive Trade Union movement here in Trinidad and Tobago, we wish to express our unwavering solidarity to the International Cuba Solidarity New York, New Jersey Coalition. We believe that now more than ever before, it is time to consolidate our support and solidarity with the people of Cuba and the Cuban Revolution. Cuba continues to provide assistance in an act of the true spirit of internationalism, even as they battle the COVID-19 pandemic in their own country. We in the Caribbean are truly grateful for the continued support from Cuba for our countries as we all struggle to defeat the COVID-19 pandemic. Cuba is an example for all the world to see what it is to be grounded in a totally different philosophy towards humanity, where it is about human well-being. It is about uncompromising solidarity. It is about people before profit. It is about treating all people with respect and love. As you comrades struggle within the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic, as you struggle under an incompetent racist president with fascist tendencies, we stand with you. We stand with the International Cuba Solidarity New York, New Jersey Coalition. We stand in solidarity with you, comrades. Now more than ever, we must unite across borders as progressive people, believing that a different world is not only possible, but must be inevitable. We must stand proud to say with a united voice, it is time to end the inhumane and unjust blockade against the people of Cuba. We stand with you, comrades, as you struggle from within the belly of the imperialist beast. We know that it's not an easy task, but you must know that you have comrades outside the borders of the United States, right here in Trinidad and Tobago and in the Caribbean, standing strong and firm with you. For us as humans to live, imperialism must die. Hasta la victoria siempre, venceremos.
Wow, well, those were some very powerful video greetings from Brazil, from Italy, and from Trinidad and Tobago. And I especially enjoyed that message from our compañero in Trinidad and Tobago, who said a better world is possible. And often we say a better world is necessary, and he's just added a better world is inevitable. What a powerful message and reminder for all of us. I'd now like to reintroduce Edgar Franks. We're very happy to have him here with us from Washington State. He is with Familias Unidas por la Justicia, and he is their political director. So please join me in welcoming Edgar Franks.
Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Good afternoon to everyone. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but we're back. It's an honor to be here with the compañeros and compañeras from all over the world, I see from the chat. So a big shout out to everyone on behalf of the farm workers here in Washington State. We send a big virtual solidarity hug to everybody out there that's fighting for justice. International May Day, International Workers' Day was yesterday, so we honor those that fight for justice and the martyrs and the people that have taken the risk of unionizing, of organizing, of going on strike, on boycott. So we know that our union would not be here without the solidarity of international people in Canada and Mexico and Europe, so and South Africa. So we want to really appreciate it in that spirit of internationalism. It's an honor to be here again. And during this tough, difficult times where capitalism has exposed itself and we all see now that it's not a sustainable economic system anymore, especially for poor people and farm workers here in Washington State, where we're finding now that more and more agricultural workers are being exposed to the coronavirus, being sick with no way of ever receiving any kind of support, medical, financial, communal support. Because we've been exploited for generations, people forget that the fight of the farm worker still exists right now to this very day. We're the poorest people in the richest country in the United States, doing the most important job of growing food and picking food and harvesting food, despite the racism, despite the pesticides and the exploitation. We're still here fighting and organizing alongside with everyone here in this great panel and everybody that's listening. So during this pandemic, I think it's necessary for us to really think beyond, I think the ideas that neoliberalism has presented have been really taken hold with the redistribution of resources going back to the richest corporations in this country, to the richest people, while the working people don't get anything, even less if you're an immigrant, an undocumented immigrant. We almost have to face the triple threat, as we call it here. You either go to work. If you don't go to work, you risk getting fired. You can get sick while you're at work, or you can get hunted down by ICE and Border Patrol and deported. So these are the conditions that immigrants and farm workers are living with and resisting every day, even though we've been deemed as essential and necessary by our state government, by the federal government. For the first time in history, we were recognized as essential, even though all work is essential. We have not been treated as such. The same conditions that have existed in farm work, the exploitative conditions and the bad housing and the racism still exist, and the wage theft, everything. We're seeing this moment as a moment to envision something beyond this current disaster capitalist model. We envision, and we are very, we look towards Cuba and other places that have survived and resisted imperialism. We know that Cuba has one of the most sustainable agricultural programs in the whole world, and with the cooperative economics and giving farmers and people land to practice sustainable practices for food production. And that's, I think, a gift that Cuba has given to all of us and the world, and a vision that you can survive outside of capitalism if you give people the opportunity to organize and envision something different. So I wanted to also thank the organizers of this event for inviting us here in our little corner in Northwest Washington, giving a space for immigrants and farm workers everywhere. And we want to again say that no al bloqueo, and we want to keep fighting and do what we can from our end here in Washington State to so that the struggle in Cuba and Venezuela and all over the world is listened to in our communities here. So thank you very much, y venceremos.
Thank you so much, compañero Edgar. It's such an honor to hear you. And in the line of advocating for the immigrant community, I think it's very, very important to denounce and to condemn the fact that the massive exodus of displaced people, not immigrants, but displaced people, such as the ones that we've seen in the past 5 years, particularly coming from Central America, is a direct effect of US imperialism and neoliberalism in our countries. And the constant US occupation, particularly military occupation of our countries, that forces our people to leave. And then when they come here, they are treated like second and third class citizens. And we've seen it. We've seen it with the COVID-19 pandemic, how the workers that do this kind of work that in most of the times are the undocumented, newly arrived, are the ones that are on the front line of dying of COVID-19. So we always say, if the United States doesn't want to see the massive exodus of people from our countries, just leave our countries, leave us alone, and stop perpetrating military coups like the one in Honduras in 2009, or the recent coup in Bolivia, or the attempted failed coups in Nicaragua and in Venezuela. They need to leave us alone. And now it's time for us to remind you that for all of those who are here, it's so many people that have accompanied us today here. And you love this kind of work that is being done by the Cuba Coalition, the Coalition in Solidarity with Cuba. So we had a conference plan for March, and because of the pandemic, and that we all had to go home and be locked in, the conference was postponed. But we want to continue with the plan of having a conference in November. And for that, for the planning of that conference, and I even have here the my palm card, right, from the conference that was planned for March, and I'll keep it as a memory. But we want to make sure that we ask you for a donation pick. And again, for the conference in November, as we were planning in March, we are planning to bring speakers from Cuba and internationally to this international conference for the normalization of US-Cuban relations in November 2020 in New York City. We are fundraising to make the conference possible. This conference will work towards the normalization of US-Cuba relations and an end to the cruel and unjust US blockade on Cuba. And to unjust, I will add criminal, the criminal economic blockade on the Cuban people. And I believe that the link was presented to where people can make a donation. I don't see the link. Maybe it should be posted again, where people can go and make a donation that will go towards the conference that is being planned for November 2020. And we all hope to be there. I'll be the first one signing in, because I was so sad when the conference was canceled in March, because we had done so much work in preparation to having that conference, and then it had to be canceled. So do we see, I don't see the link, but I don't know if it's going to be posted or not. Yeah. So
the image did come up. Unfortunately, it's gone down. I think it's coming up again. There we go.
It's right here. Exactly. So uscubanormalization.org. uscubanormalization.org, International Conference to Normalize US-Cuba Relations, rescheduled to November 14th to 15th in New York City. We're very happy about that, but we need your money. We need your money. We need your contribution, and we thank you in advance. So after the conference, don't forget to tune in so you can give us your donations. Thank you.
That's right. And if you look at the image down in the red text at the bottom, it says find the donate tab at us-cubanormalization.org, or you can also text the phone number there and type the word conference in the text message and follow the prompt to make a donation. So thank you so much to Lucy, and we'll hopefully maybe get that text information also in the chat, and that way people can make sure to get it. If you're worried about it disappearing, take a picture on your phone or take a picture from your screen, and please do make sure to get a donation into us. I would also like to make a short announcement before we start the question and answer period. We are going to be talking about the Saving Lives campaign. So some of you out there, we've got over 250 people participating today, both on Facebook Live and through the Zoom chat. And hopefully some of you have already heard about this Saving Lives campaign, but maybe it's new to others. The campaign has its own website, which is savinglives.us-cubanormalization.org. And this is a campaign that was launched by the organizing committee as well as the National Network on Cuba, the Canadian Network on Cuba, and La Table de Concertation de Solidarité Québec-Cuba. And these three organizations have come together to basically launch a letter demanding further medical and scientific collaboration between the US and Cuba and Canada. And I'm just going to read the main three demands, which are: one, allowing US, Cuba, Canada medical, clinical, and scientific collaboration, including possibly inviting Cuban medical brigades to provide direct medical assistance and or to provide advice and guidance in treating COVID-19. Two, incorporating Cuba's interferon alpha-2b recombinant in clinical trials in the US, Canada, and with the World Health Organization, and the granting by the US Food and Drug Administration approval for Cuba's interferon alpha-2b recombinant. Three, ending US economic and travel sanctions against Cuba, including its extraterritorial nature and the attempts to stop all other countries accepting Cuban medical brigades and assistance, and all ongoing measures that prevent Cuba accessing and importing medical equipment and medicines to confront COVID-19. So this is a campaign that's very close to many of our hearts, and of course, very much connected to what we're talking about today for International Workers' Day. But this is an ongoing campaign. We're trying to get celebrities, politicians, as well as journalists to be writing articles about these issues all around the world. So if you're interested in supporting the campaign, in forwarding out our press release, in signing on to the letter, or working to try and get others to sign on, please do visit the website savinglives.us-cubanormalization.org. We'll put that in the chat as well. And we hope that you will get involved in this important campaign in support of Cuba and Cuba's important work internationally at this time. I'm going to hand it back to Lucy now to introduce our question and answers.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the beautiful update on the initiative. So now we will open the question and answer period. Throughout the program, people have been typing their questions and many comments that we appreciate very much. It's been very active, very interactive. It's been beautiful. Thank you for all your beautiful solidarity messages. And Tamara and I will be reading throughout your questions. We will do our best to address everyone's questions, but your questions may be combined with others. And we may not get to every single one of the questions, but we're going to try to get to as many of them as possible. Please continue to use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. As a reminder, if people are participating over the phone, you may also email your questions to info@uscubanormalization.org. I'll repeat again, info@uscubanormalizations.org. So now we're going to transition into the Q&A period. Tamara, you want to take?
Yeah, so we've had actually a lot of questions for Judy and Chris, especially. They really touched, I think, on a lot of issues that are close to people's hearts right now. So our first question is specifically for Judy, but I think also applies to Chris, and it's asking how people in the US can help. So they are saying that there's many, obviously, different issues. People are stuck at home. A lot of this conversation is happening online rather than through big rallies or other events. But people are wondering how they can support frontline workers to get the supplies that they need and to confront the roadblocks put up by the government.
Well, I think, I'm unmuted now?
Yes, go ahead.
I mean, we've gotten a lot of support already. I think the problem is in the non-union places where people are much more liable to suffer repression and retaliation. I think the public has to support the narrative that we need the best PPE possible, because the incidence of infection of not just nurses and doctors and others in healthcare, but all the frontline workers who are forced to work without the proper PPE are getting much sicker than the general public. So that has to be number one. Number two, to support paid sick leave for workers who don't have paid sick leave. Number three, to ensure that people who need support, such as housing or childcare, who must work, can get those supports. Number four, those who do not work, people who don't work, are just as important to us. We don't want the system to open up and start all over again. With what we went through a month ago, ending only about 2 weeks ago, it's still bad, but the horrors, we don't ever want to see that again. And that, if that spreads to other communities, we are going to be here 2 years. So stopping this opening up and having basing everything on the science, not on politics. And in order to do that, people shouldn't have to choose between starving and dying. So we need financial supports for people to get through this time, different projects, different creativity, so that people can engage in useful but safe activities, and not stopping unemployment. We suspect that this push to go back to work is so that people can no longer get unemployment. There's also blocking for getting workers' comp. All the programs that are designed to help workers are running into trouble.
Chris, we've actually got a specific question for you, so Lucy's going to read that.
Yes, thank you so much. Chris, here it is. So what are the next steps in your fight for safety and for a union? And how can the hundreds of us listening from throughout the US and worldwide help you? Can you put out there a link for us to, let me see, another message came through there, but let me just, okay. Can you put up there a link for us to support you, to send messages of support to demand that you be rehired? Who does that demand go to?
Right. Well, to answer the first part, what we have, as far as what we have going forward, I'm working towards basically building a rank and file committee for Amazon employees nationwide. It's going to be a long process. We have a long battle ahead. I've only been terminated for almost over a month, just a month now as of yesterday. So they have a large workforce. They have about 600,000 employees nationwide, and there's unions all over the nation that would love to unionize this workforce. But I believe that a rank and file committee controlled by the employees is the best beneficial option that'll meet all our demands. So I'm working towards that. I built an alliance up. I'm holding weekly conferences, and we're discussing open dialogue of how we can move towards that. Hopefully more people join and support us in that fight. As far as how you can support me personally, as far as a demand to get me rehired, there's been plenty of politicians that already did that, sent out demand letters to the company, like Bernie Sanders, Cory Booker, AOC, even the Attorney State General of New York, Letitia James, she has stepped in and sent out demand letters. My own legal team has sent out demand letters. What I'm asking for from supporters and consumers around the world, boycott these companies, these billion-dollar CEOs, these one percenters that don't care about the lower class people, the minorities, the frontliners, the first responders. Boycott them. These corporations don't protect their workers, then they don't deserve to make money. And like Judy said, do not go back outside. Do not listen to the government. Listen to science. We're not ready to reopen the economy. That's how you support us. Listen to the head of the horse, which are the nurses and the doctors, the experts in the medical field. And also, as far as the frontliners, if we're mobilized and we're crying for help, as far as protesting, join us on the picket lines, join us online, boycotting in any way possible. We greatly appreciate that support and solidarity.
Excellent. All right, we're just trying to see if we can get the Cubans back up on the line, because there's been a few questions about Alpha 2B and some other issues. But I'm going to, while we get that set up, I'm going to go to a question that was asked, where in Canada is the virus most deadly? And how are these affecting communities of color, such as the Black community, Indigenous people, and poor people? And Don, I think you wanted to take that.
Sure. I mean, in Canada, we haven't had the outbreak, you know, living next door to the US and seeing what's going on in Michigan and New York State, you know, and we look at ourselves, we feel lucky. The main areas, of course, are Toronto and Quebec. Quebec seemed to have got hit the hardest. Most of the rationale behind that was they had an earlier March break. And so the travel was earlier in the month than the rest of Canada because they did have a much higher rate. Both Ontario and Quebec have had disastrous situations in old care homes, especially. It's been really bad. Thank God it hasn't gotten really into our Indigenous communities yet. There is one in, I believe in Alberta, where it had gotten into, which goes to mention, you know, I didn't mention this in the talk, but our Indigenous communities have actually gone to Cuba and asked to have their doctors come to Canada. That's how bad it is for our Indigenous communities when it comes to healthcare, that, you know, they've gone to Cuba because they see the community-based medicine that the Cubans can actually bring to a community, and that's what they need in these communities. But so far, the Indigenous community hasn't been hit, you know, with a direct blow, but that could change. You know, we've had several outbreaks at meat processing plants, just like the US has had, where they've had to shut them down. So, you know, that could happen. As far as the Asian and the Black communities and the Hispanic communities here, we don't have the numbers that you've seen in the US. You know, when I look at the percentage-wise, it's very low in comparison. So it's hard to really put a figure on that as far as, you know, when we see the numbers of what it's done in the Hispanic and the Black communities in the US, we don't see the same thing happening in Canada. But, you know, you'd have to look a lot closer at those numbers to get that answer, I think.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. This question is for our brothers from Cuba. And the question goes as follows. What can you tell us about the interferon alpha 2B vaccine? And also, how is the blockade impacting the struggle, the Cuban struggle against the virus? Did they hear us? I wonder if they heard it.
We're just, I think Cheryl's just working to get them online. So we'll just give them a moment. There we go. For those of you who weren't with us before, our compañeros from Cuba, compañero Yamil and compañera Gilda, are not able to connect to Zoom because of the US blockade on Cuba. And so we have to go through a few additional steps to bring them online with us. And the sound quality is a little bit less, but overall it was pretty clear. So Lucy, did you want to ask the question again?
Yes, and I'll go slowly. what can you tell us about the interferon alpha 2B? And also, how is the blockade impacting the Cuban struggle against the virus?
Are you hearing us, Yamil? Are you hearing us?
Yes.
The question is about alpha, interferon alpha.
¿Con qué me lo puede decir del interferon doble?
Okay, the question is,
¿Cómo el bloqueo afecta a la lucha de Cuba contra el virus?
I know there's a lot of noise.
Sí, lo mismo que tenemos. ¿Qué nos puede decir del interferon alfa y cómo el bloqueo afecta a la lucha contra el coronavirus?
Okay, about the interferon alpha 2B, it's a drug that was created in Cuba several years ago and has been used in several other treatments. Now, specifically for the COVID, has proven effective. It was started used by China, and people became very aware of the interferon alpha 2B. But because of the laws of the blockade, the U.S. is banned from using that drug and to access for the treatment in the United States. That means that the blockade is not only affecting the Cuban people, but also it affects the U.S. citizens that are not able to use not only interferon alpha 2B, but many other drugs that our biotechnology industry have been able to use, like the ivermectin for the treatment of to prevent amputations in the legs and the arms of diabetic people. So that is not only affecting, as I said earlier, the Cuban population, the blockade, that policy that has been there for over 60 years now, affects not only the Cuban people, but also the U.S. people that is banned from using those drugs and those medicines that Cuba is producing.
Thank you very much, Yamil. Cheryl, did you want to also try asking about the impacts of the blockade on their treatment of COVID-19?
Of course. Probably you've heard about the ship that was sent by China, not only to Cuba, bringing donations, medical supplies for Cuba. Not only for Cuba, but also for many other Latin American and even Caribbean countries. But that ship was not allowed to come to Cuba. So banning our country to enjoy, to use those donations that were brought from all the way from China. So that is a very concrete. There are many, many other examples, and that would take a longer discussion. But that is the latest example.
Thank you very much, Yamil. We have one more question, and then we'll probably go back to our speakers because the quality here is not super. But the question is about the possibility of Cuban medical brigades to go to the United States or to Canada, and specifically Indigenous communities in Canada.
So, well, I cannot speak on behalf of our government. I'm not a government official, but due to the experience I have as a Cuban person, I know Cuba has been there for us. I was mentioning earlier in my presentation Cuba has been there for many, many years for the people in need. So I am pretty sure that if the request is presented, Cuba officially, Cuba would be in the will of helping. Actually, remember the birth of the Henry Reef Brigade was precisely when the hurricane struck in the United States, and Cuba offered the possibility of sending that brigade to help United States. And we didn't receive any answer to that request. So Cuba, I think, I cannot speak again on behalf of the government, but I'm pretty sure that the doctors, the Cuban doctors would be more than willing to go to Canada, to the United States, to anywhere that is needed to help the population.
All right, I want to thank Yamil and also to Gilda, our compañera and compañero in Havana. So Yamil, just, I know the sound quality is not great, but just for that last question, Yamil said, of course, he's not speaking on behalf of the Cuban government, but wanted to remind us all of the birth of the Henry Reef Brigade. These are, of course, the brigades that are Cuban emergency medical brigade that is now in 20 different countries, over 20 countries all over the world, fighting COVID-19. And those Henry Reef Brigades were started after Hurricane Katrina hit the United States. And Cuba mobilized doctors to send to the United States. Unfortunately, they were rejected by the Bush administration. And then also about how Cuban doctors are ready to go anywhere if that invitation is made and the connection is made with the Cuban government, and the possibility is there. So thank you so much to Yamil for that. Lucy has our next question, and we're going back to Chris Smalls.
When are the next protests at Amazon on Staten Island, Chris? People want to know, when are the next protests at Amazon on Staten Island?
I'm sorry, yeah, I'm here. The next protest, there's no set date for our next protest. Well, we want to be strategic and we want to be smart and we want to keep everybody safe. So like I said, we've been holding weekly conferences with my team from all across the nation. We do it collectively. Yesterday, we built an alliance with other major corporations, Whole Foods, Instacart, Target, Walmart. We even have FedEx and UPS drivers, DPS drivers, that's all involved now. So we want to move as a unit from here on out, starting yesterday. And also the nurses as well, the transit workers of New York. We want to move as a collective unit now from here on out. And I believe that with the weekly conferences that I orchestrate, we'll have a strategic plan on how we want to protest. And I definitely will release that with ample time for the public to know and join the fight. As of now, we don't have a specific date, but we do have an idea of trying to mobilize for the actual Labor Day. So look forward, stay in tune and follow me on my social media platforms. We might be mobilizing for Labor Day coming up, and yeah, just stay tuned. We will definitely be announcing that.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much. And here's a question for Tulio. And the question is, how has, let me see, because there's something getting, okay, here's the question. How has the U.S. blockade on Venezuela had the extraterritorial effect on trade between Cuba and Venezuela's trade with other countries throughout the Caribbean and Latin America?
Well, it's not just a blockade of people or Venezuelan companies overseas. It's also a blockade of the international financial system. So we have money to pay for a service or goods, and we cannot do a wire transfer because the money, the banks, the international banks, they don't want to work with us because some of the pressure that the U.S. government put on them. So with Cuba, well, we are brothers and sisters, so it doesn't affect us too much. We have daily flights to Cuba with our own planes, so we trade regularly. But yeah, I mean, we have, for example, some gold, a lot, by the way, that was kept by the British government. We have several thousand of millions of euros trapped in Portugal. And as you well know, Donald Trump robbed Citgo from us. Citgo has 3 refineries in Texas and more than 6,000 gas stations in the country. They still open, they still refine oil. Now they refine Canadian oil. That is a very extra heavy oil as the Venezuela. I don't know where the money is going. Maybe Guaido knows. But we are not getting any money from Citgo. So it affects us in many ways. Transportation system, for example. Our transportation system is a mix between French and Spanish system. So we are not able to buy the parts for our metro system. We have some cable cars that you can commute between the subway system and the hills, like in Medellin, Colombia. Now half of the system is working because it depends on Sweden or Switzerland. So we cannot buy the wire that we need. So it affects us a lot. But well, again, we have some allies around the world. So we are fighting this blockade back with those helps.
Thank you so much to Tulio. We're just going to take one more question, and then we're going to give our presenters a chance to give kind of a 2-minute little conclusion as we begin to wrap up. But again, please stay with us. We've got important messages from each of our speakers as they wrap up, and then also we'll be playing some video and music of the International and come together in unity to wrap up this International Workers' Day. And one of the questions that we received was if the WHO, the International World Health Organization, has been assisting Cuba and Venezuela in this struggle. Maybe Tulio, you could take that question. Tulio, did you hear that?
What was the question again? Sorry.
Asking if the World Health Organization has been assisting Cuba, or in your case, Venezuela, during this time of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah. Also, besides the Russian Federation and China, Cuba, India, Iran, Turkey, we had some help, very welcomed, from the UN. So the UN came here to give us some medical tools and masks and everything. So they're helping us a lot.
Okay, thank you very much, Tulio. We do have questions that we were not able to get to today, and we apologize for that. Of course, people are wondering with these problems that the world is confronting today under COVID-19, with capitalism being kind of further exposed for its corrupt nature against working people, you know, what is kind of your message to conclude this International Workers' Day? So I'd like to invite our speakers to come forward and just share their kind of concluding thoughts for this afternoon. Judy, would you like to start?
Okay, big question. I think, you know, this is a never before experienced period, as far as I can remember, and I think I'm pretty old now. So it gives us all an opportunity to raise questions that people have, to reiterate those questions and offer alternative solutions that are very radical solutions. I saw there was a question about how do we do a just transition also. I think that nothing, you know, short of, it's very difficult. If we're going to transition, if we're going to have a kind of a transition, people have to understand that there are going to be very powerful forces against any kind of transition to a kinder and gentler society. So we should certainly be aware of it. And we see the role that Trump has played and that particular tendency in mobilizing a very fascistic kind of structure in the country. And I think we can't pretend that that doesn't exist. That exists. At the same time, I think the masses of people, what I have found in disasters is the best, brings out the best of people and brings out the worst in some people, but it's really bringing out the best in many. And the sense of solidarity and support that we're seeing across the board is something that's very important to build on and to talk about the things that people never felt they could talk about, that they were complacent about or felt that they had no control over the future. So the solidarity that we express and the work that we do in general should always have a little bit of a conversation there about changing. We feel very comfortable now in talking about a national health system. This has been something that's been escalating over the years, many years of struggle to think about that. That's one piece. Having supports, having social supports for people, understanding that people really have no choices in this world, not just because of the pandemic, but in general, people are living on a thread. And when that thread is cut, they just completely collapse. And, you know, just embracing all of us. That's the ideological part. The part for unions and communities is to develop our structures, educate our members, and recognize that we're a force. I think, like Chris says, you know, this solidarity between transit workers and healthcare workers and precarious workers and unemployed workers, building that kind of a structure and pulling in some of the more progressive elected leaders as well is a way to get that message out there. We have to keep doing it. And I think I've experienced these disasters before, and there's nothing been like this, but I find people get amnesia after about a month when things go back to something close to normal. And so we have a window of time now to really do this work, and I think we need to do it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Judy. I'll go now to Don Foreman. Don.
Yeah, I didn't hear the whole question, Tamara. You got me at a disadvantage.
It wasn't really a question. It was mostly where do working people go from here, and why do we celebrate International Workers' Day?
Well, I mean, International Workers' Day is something that, you know, in North America, well, Canada, I'll just speak for Canada, we're constantly explaining it to members that Labor Day is not our day. You know, the government's moved in and took away International Workers' Day for a reason. So we're always trying to bring workers back to that center as to what Workers' Day is all about in May 1st, and we'll continue to do that work. We've just actually had a meeting last week, and we're organizing a conference in the next week or so of some different minds around the activist spectrum, including labor, as to the post-COVID sort of reality that's going to hit us all. We all know the rich aren't going to want to pay for this, and we all know that the governments have rung up huge debts paying for this. So if we're going to sit back and wait for austerity measures to come our way, that's going to happen. So we have to mobilize like we've never mobilized before when it comes to the working class. And what Chris talks about, you know, we can't just live in our bubbles of unions. You know, the unions have to expand outside. You know, I don't really don't take me the wrong way here, Chris. I love the worker organizing sort of model, and I don't care if workers join a union or they organize that way. As long as workers are organized and that we all work together. I mean, this pandemic has shown us something. It doesn't matter if you're sweeping the floor. It doesn't matter if you're cleaning the toilet, delivering the mail, working in the grocery store, delivering a parcel, driving a truck. It's all the low-page working class that are out there on the front lines right now. And like never before, we have to organize all of us together in a solidarity move. Going back to normal is not an option for me. My parents brought me up on a kind of thing that all of us were brought up back in my day, that they'd give me a better place to live in the future. I can't tell my kids that anymore. My kids are in their 30s. They're not going to have a better future than I have. And you know, for us as workers, we've got to work like hell to change this model. And we've got an opportunity. I understand the picture in the US is much different than Canada, but there is an opportunity here to change the way things are. And you're right. After this is over, people are going to, we've got to hit them hard, because they're going to come after us. They're going to come after our benefits. They're going to come after our pensions. They're going to come after everything that we hold near and dear in our collective agreements and say we can't afford it anymore, and we better be ready for that.
Thank you so much to Don, and I'm going to welcome up Chris now to share his closing remarks.
Yeah, Don couldn't have put it any better. 600,000 employees for Amazon nationwide. Almost 800 to 1 million employees worldwide for Amazon. This virus spreads to 2.5 people. The governments want to reopen the economy. God forbid we all are asymptomatic and carriers of this virus that work for Amazon. We come home to our communities, we come home to our families. Judy and the nurses, the doctors, everybody around the world that are in the medical field. We will be the second wave if we don't wake up. We don't come together. We'll be the second wave, and we're not prepared for that. Obviously, we're being misled, misinformed to go back outside. That's the wrong thing to do. So what we're doing here today, bringing back the real International Workers' Day, the real Labor Day, we have to keep this tradition alive. Like Don said, the government is trying to bury it. We have a Labor Day in the U.S. just to give people the day off to have barbecues. That's not really what it's meant for. We brought back that tradition yesterday. The torch was sort of passed to me. People have been mobilizing way before me. But yesterday was historical because we formed an alliance that's never been seen before. It was unprecedented. We had competitors come together. The lower class people, the minorities of everywhere need to come together and take the power back. And that's the only way we're going to get through this. I want to raise my children, my 7-year-old twins, and a better future generation than I have. And that's what I continue to fight for. And I think we all fighting for the same thing. So let's continue to do that, spread knowledge, spread the message. In solidarity, I stand with you guys. And thank you guys for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us, Chris. We really appreciate it. Kaya Saba, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
All right. Give us the wrap up from South Africa, compañero.
Look, I think we're also facing the same problem as Chris and them, in that, as I've mentioned, that we've been on a lockdown since the 26th of March, and now the government is trying to relax some of the regulations that underpinned the lockdown. And we have the view that we're not ready really to risk the life of workers, because most of these workplaces that they would return to have not been disinfected. They don't have capacity to test workers. They don't have adequate PPEs. So it will be just like gambling with the life of workers, just for the sake of profiteering. So we really want to send a message to our government, especially in our governments and big companies across the world, that you cannot gamble with the life of workers, especially breadwinners, our heroes and heroines who are in the front line of fighting against the pandemic. So having said that, we'll fight that, and we're willing to pay solidarity to everyone across the world. We'll gladly issue statements and hold a solidarity protest. We just have to share information so that we will play solidarity with each other. The unity of workers has never been important more than now. We need to unite as workers and ensure that we roll back the onslaught by the government and big companies, because theirs is only to maximize their profits and dividends while workers are losing their lives. So having said that, let us unite and fight back.
Thank you so much to Kaya, all the way from South Africa, that beautiful solidarity message. I'd now like to invite Tulio Verges in Venezuela to give us his closing comments.
Well, yeah, May Day is the most important day of the year. And I think that we should have more trade union leaders becoming elected officers around the world, so we can do a change from inside, above all in these capitalist countries, to have more people from the trade union sector involved in politics. It will help us to do a change. I will also like to say, to express our solidarity to the inmates. It's a serious situation of the inmates around the world. Not much in Venezuela, but most of the world, most of the countries, the inmates are suffering this pandemic situation also. So I would like to say, express my solidarity with them and their family members, especially with the Panthers, free the Panthers again. And I have to leave you guys because the food distribution program just arrived to my neighborhood. So mail in the neighborhood will go to the truck and carry all the bags to distribute to the families. So thank you for inviting me, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you so much for being with us, Tulio. All right. So as we begin wrapping up our program, I just want to make a couple of announcements, and then I'm going to hand it over to my dear co-chair, Lucy. Today, I think, has been a really important gathering of people from all over the world. I think it really went beyond all of the organizers' expectations of how we were able to connect so many people and so many struggles today for International Workers' Day, and how all of these struggles are coming together with people who are critical of capitalism and imperialism and who want to envision a better world with Cuba and Venezuela as our important guides. I want to invite everybody who is on the line for 2 upcoming webinars. The first is on Saturday, May 9th. That's next Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It's called Cuba Fights COVID-19 Fundraising Campaign. It was mentioned by Yamil in Cuba, and is a chance for people to come together who want to join the Canadian Network on Cuba in its fundraising campaign to raise money for Cuba's medical missions. There will be information put in the chat, but that is going to be organized next Saturday, May 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And the next webinar being organized by the US-Cuba Normalization Campaign will be in support of the Saving Lives campaign I mentioned earlier on the call. It will be on Tuesday, May 19th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and it will be titled Paying Humanity a Debt, Cuba's Solidarity with Africa and the Caribbean. And it's going to be taking place on Malcolm X's birthday and celebrating the work of Cuba in Africa and the partnership and friendship between Cuba and Africa. So please make sure to tune into our website us-cubanormalization.org to get more information and to sign up to that next webinar on May 19th. I'll now hand it over to Lucy.
Thank you so much. And my final thoughts very briefly is just to thank everyone's effort to come together to this excellent dialogue among all of us to see through our struggles and to build a solidarity movement that will bring down capitalism and will build a socialist society in the United States, in Latin America, and around the world. And with those words, I thank you all. I thank all the speakers and the participants. Our apologies if we could not answer all of your questions. I want to remind everyone that all the help among us is welcome in this fight. We're all necessary in this fight. I urge everyone to continuously check the website for future webinars and other information on Cuba, on the Cuba Solidarity website, which is US-cubannormalization.org, US-cubannormalization.org, and to join the e-newsletter to stay in the loop. Thank you. Go ahead, Tamara.
Lucy, do you want to say any final comments and then also let people know about our upcoming video?
Yes, I already stated that our objective is to bring down capitalism and to build a socialist society around the world. And long live May Day, viva el 1 de mayo. And so now we're going to say goodbye with our video, the International, La Internacional, with segments from Cuba 2019 May Day. Power to the people.
So I've just heard that Yamil is actually ready to speak. So Sharon, if you want to bring up Yamil for his closing words, and then we'll do the May Day video together with the International.
Fantastic. I thought we had lost our Cuban compañeros. I'm glad they're still here for their conclusion.
Yes.
Go ahead, Yamil.
So I just heard that Yamil is actually ready to speak. So Sharon, want to bring up Yamil for his closing words, and then we'll do the video together.
¿Qué dice?
Yeah.
Okay. So as a way of ending up, wrapping up, I'd like to highlight some ideas. First, has to do with the question I was asked before. Cuba will continue to provide worldwide solidarity to the working class. Okay, so those medical brigades Cuba sends to the different parts of the world, they're not for the elite, but for the poor, for the working class of those countries. The second idea is we need to continue working on unity. We'll be able to overcome all the challenges we have to face, including the new coronavirus. The third idea would be we need to get rid of the policy of the blockade. And for that, we need to be united, we need to be strong, and we are counting on you, our friends all over the world. And last but not least, we need our friends to stay safe, to protect, especially in the times we are living. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you for this great event, this great webinar, and thanks to the organizers and all the participants. Thank you very much. Viva Cuba!
Viva Cuba!
Viva!
So a big thank you to Yamil. I know the sound was very challenging, but he sends his greetings and solidarity from the working people of Cuba. And now we go into May Day 2019 in the streets of Cuba before COVID-19 in La Plaza de la Revolución for the International.
No.
Allison, your screen is not projecting. Allison, if you can hear me, we're not seeing the Cuban video. It's not displaying. Allison, can you hear me? We're just seeing you, not the video of Cuba.
Ah, sounds good.
Please pull up the video from Cuba and show us your screen.
Try again. I was enjoying the music. All right, everyone, here we are, the International.
Viva Cuba! Viva
Viva! Viva!
Viva Cuba!
So thank you so much, everyone, for being here with us today on this International May Day call. and coming together from all over the world. It's not the same as being in the streets with 2 million Cubans, but it's pretty amazing. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Viva el 1 de mayo. Hasta la victoria siempre. Venceremos.
Venceremos.
So we'll again bring up the image so that you can make a donation, and a reminder that we are planning for a conference in November, and all your donations will go towards making a live conference in New York City where we can come together once the situation has changed. Thank you so much, everybody. Viva 1 de Mayo, viva Cuba, viva Venezuela.
Viva. Abajo las sanciones.
Thank you, everybody.
Siempre traidores.
Thank you.